I'm really proud of Doncaster, and I'm proud to be from Doncaster. We brought in £9 million worth of income to Doncaster last year, and 37% of people that we dealt with over the last 6 months have said that they felt more able to deal with the problems, and 49% said they were more in control of the finances.
Hello, you're listening to the Yorkshire Business Podcast. We feature bright and brilliant businesses from across Yorkshire, and we've got a great guest on the pod today. This morning, I am speaking to James Woods. James is the CEO of the Doncaster Citizens Advice Bureau. We talk about the vital work that they're doing in the community in Doncaster and how this really leans into employability and employment practices in the area. It's a great episode. James's details are in the show notes, and I would absolutely encourage you to reach out to him. My name's Chloe. I'm the founder of OneSource HR, and I'm the host of the Yorkshire Business Podcast.
Yeah, good morning. Thanks for being here. I'm James Woods. I'm the Chief Exec at Citizens Advice Doncaster Borough.
Awesome. And how long have you been doing that for?
It's just over 3 years. I've been Chief Exec, but I've actually worked for the Citizens Advice as an organisation for 15 years, I think.
Yeah, quite a journey.
Quite a while, yeah.
Yeah. So I'm guessing, have you seen kind of the full scope of what the roles look like in the team?
Yeah, definitely. So I started off as a debt advisor, so that's dealing with people with financial difficulty on a day-to-day basis. I then worked my way up to run the debt team, and then from there I went on to operations manager, development officer, supervisor. So I've held most positions within the organisation before I ended up being the chief exec. But I think that has stood me in good stead, and because I understand the challenges that the staff face, and I understand the complexities of each of the different roles because I've done them and I've been there. So yeah, I think it's given me a really good grounding in some of the decisions that I've had to make, and the way I design projects. I think is possibly more advice focused than somebody that didn't have that background of actually practically doing the role.
Yeah, and I think as well, it probably gives you like a good appreciation for the service user's perspective as well, because you have actually dealt with them one-on-one as opposed to just coming in at a senior level.
Yeah, and advice is hard and it is difficult, and you are dealing with people 9 times out of 10 that are in crisis. So the people are upset, people are annoyed. So it does give you some scope as to how to approach that, how to support your staff with that. Like, it's really important that the staff feels that they're working in a supported environment, and that if they do have that difficult client or that upsetting client, that the support's there and that they're not taking that home with them, because that is difficult and it is a challenge. So having done that and been there and experienced some of the things that the staff experience on a day-to-day basis, I think I like to think it makes me a better leader and a better, more understanding boss, I guess.
Yeah, no, I would agree with that. And I think that brings us on to a really nice point of actually giving our listeners today an understanding of what Citizens Advice actually do, because you've just touched on there that you're often dealing with people in crisis, and I'm not sure that everybody does actually know what a vital service you do provide.
No, yeah, thank you. They probably don't, because I feel like one of the challenges that we have with the service is everybody knows the brand, excuse me, but actually if you asked everybody in the street what do they do, there might be a bit of a disconnect from what the services we're actually running. So we're a free, independent, confidential, impartial advice service. We provide advice and support on a range of different issues, predominantly debt and welfare rights, so benefits, advice and support. But we also do housing advice, we do welfare, we do employment advice, we do family breakdown advice. We launched a brilliant project recently around digital inclusion and the fact that traps people in poverty. So yeah, there's a very far-ranging list of topics that we can advise and support people on. So there's about 45, 48 of us as paid staff, and then there's 10 to 15 volunteers. And that includes a board of trustees. We've got 8 trustees that do it on a voluntary basis. We've got frontline advisors, and predominantly our team is made up of frontline advisors. So this is people actually in community locations, in food banks, in GP surgeries, actually providing the advice that people need on the range of subjects that they have problems or issues with. We have a small senior leadership team of an ops manager and a business development manager and a trainer and things like that. And my role is to sort of make sure that we're meeting the needs of the community, but also our own legal compliance and business things that we have to do.
Yeah. See, that's really interesting in itself, because my understanding or experience of Citizens Advice is maybe there's a telephone advice line, or you can book an appointment and come into an office in the city centre or town centre. But I didn't actually know that you had people outposted in places where you are likely, I guess, to come across people who might need help and support but don't know where to go for it.
Yeah, so one of the things that when I first took over as chief exec was I wanted to change the direction of travel slightly, because we were very much, we're here, if you need help, come to us. But Doncaster's geography doesn't really fit with that. And when you speak to people, transport and links to transport are often heavily criticised. So my logic when I first took over as chief exec was the way we can really make a lasting impact is be where the problems are. So we worked with local authority and community groups to ensure that our advisors were based in trusted locations across the city. So like I say, food banks, libraries, community locations, and that really worked. We went from seeing a turnover of approximately 3,000 or 4,000 people to last year we saw just under 10,000 people.
Wow.
So being where the problem is and being in those trusted places and becoming when we first went there, it was about being where we are. Now I feel like we've developed out and we've grown and we're a trusted member of these communities now, which is really important when you're asking people to talk to you about deeply personal things like the finances, the relationship breakdowns, the fact they've been discriminated against, all these things. People will only engage with you if they trust you.
Yeah.
And that's really important. So by basing ourselves in already trusted places and working hard to become that trusted voice within a community, I think it's done us wonders. But what's more importantly, it's done wonders for the communities. They are more resilient. They can deal with the problems better. People feel that the support, they know where to get the support because we're there and with that trusted voice in the community.
Yeah. Do you know what? I think that's absolutely awesome. And that's like one of the things that really struck me when we first spoke and met, how much more reach that you've had, especially in a time where I guess a lot of people feel like a lot of services are being pulled back. You know, there's been talk, it's been over the last decade really, of things closing like high street banks, and how I guess that brings us on to the points about your work around digital inclusion as well, because I know that's something that's been really criticised. You know, closing of banks, people can't access their money and their accounts in the same way, and think sometimes we might take it for granted how easy some of us can use and access technology. So could you share a little bit about that project?
Yeah, sure. And the point you first made about being I use this fancy word, omni-channel service. So basically that means you can contact us in a way that's convenient and suitable for you. So that's really important because, like you say, not everybody wants to deal with somebody over the phone. Somebody wants to be sat in an office speaking to somebody. Somebody wants to do it virtually. You can do it by chat. You can do it by email. We're there to support you in the way that's most appropriate to you, which I think is really important. Because, like I say, people have different needs. People have different levels of understanding. Sometimes you just need to be sat in the office with somebody going through the problem and being able to have one of my team sit and listen, because in most cases the main problem people have is that they don't have that person to listen to them and guide them through what is often a difficult situation that they find themselves in. In regards to digital inclusion, there's 17% of South Yorkshire is digitally excluded, and when we say digitally excluded, we don't just mean that they don't have access to the internet, although that is a substantial barrier. We also mean they don't have the equipment, they don't have the digital skills in order to fully engage with modern life. In modern life, everything is online, like apps and GP surgeries is a prime example. Lots of GP surgeries are now switching to online booking systems. If you're not digitally savvy, there's a barrier in tier one, whether that's age, whether that's you've not got the skills, you don't have an email set up. And I think there is a bit of a misconception with digital inclusion that it is all older age people, but that's not really the case. Just because you can use Facebook or TikTok or some of the social media things, that doesn't necessarily mean that you can realistically apply for a blue badge or set up email or book appointments for things. So I feel like there's a bit of a misconception with digital inclusion, but it really, really does trap people in poverty. And the more we move into a digital age of everything being online, the more difficult that's going to be. So part of our digital exclusion project is to champion digital by choice, that services shouldn't be digital by design. I understand why they are, and we have a digital arm to our service. But it's really important that it's not digital by design, because it does exclude a large proportion of people. But the digital inclusion project itself is fantastic. It not only does it provide advice and support to people that are excluded, we've got a device and data bank. So the idea behind that is if you're digitally excluded because you can't afford a device or you can't afford the data, because what you find is, from a debt advice perspective, one of the first things that people choose not to pay is things like their internet. But that really does have a more of a significant impact than you think, because 90% of benefits claims are all online now. So even to manage a universal credit account, it's much easier to do if you do it online. So it's really important. So the fact that this project addresses the device and the equipment side of things is really important. What it also does is we have a skills course, so we help support people with the things that they're challenge with. So we help them set up emails, we help them manage their utilities online, because a lot of the times you're asked, the energy crisis has been really significant, but bills are more accurate if you can provide more accurate meter readings. So a lot of the time this is upload your meter reading to a website. If you don't have access to the website, you then have to call them, which is really difficult to get through. So we support people with that. We put some digital budgeting tools on a tablet, and once you've completed the 4-week course, you can take the tablet away. And the idea being is, during this 4-week course, you've learned how to use it. You've put tablets, you've put apps and programs on it that will help you. And then you go away with the tablet to be more digitally aware and digitally included. So it's a really great project.
Yeah. No, and I suspect that a lot of people listening are going to be able to relate to this, whether it's, they've perhaps got grandparents that have struggled with getting GP appointments. I know I have, because their GP surgeries in Doncaster have moved to digital by design, as you were saying. So it is the fact that you can't just go down for 8 o'clock in the morning and be in the queue and get an appointment. You are literally turned away and told to go and do it online, which is really sad and quite frustrating. But right through to some of those other examples you mentioned there about people who perhaps are struggling in poverty and debt, they might choose to not pay things like their internet because it's perhaps not seen as essential. And I've seen that throughout the course of my career, and especially in the last couple of years, people who have been off work sick and they've been AWOL, so we've not had any kind of notification about where they are, if they're okay. And when we've managed to get a hold of them, it's a case of, well, I couldn't phone in because my phone's cut off because I've not paid my phone bill, or I've not got any credit. So they're completely isolated. They've got no internet. They can't make a phone call. And it's quite a vicious cycle where actually then that's impacting their employment, because often something like going AWOL could be classed as gross misconduct in a lot of businesses.
Certainly. And I think you made an interesting point earlier about banks closing. Banks, particularly for older age people, are the place where they've grown up going to the bank on a weekly basis. If you take that out of a community, particularly rural communities, it just leaves people financially isolated, and in a time where rising costs and the cost of living is still impacting people, it's really, really significant. I think it's interesting what you said about financial inclusion being a trigger to absenteeism at work, or having an impact on work. And I think that's true. And the Joseph Rowntree Foundation actually did some work, some research a couple of years ago in relation to employment and the links to advice. And the research sort of suggested that if you are an employer and you support your staff with things like financial support, well-being, the likelihood is that they're not calling in because they've had a migraine or they feel sick or something like that. The likelihood is it's a different barrier. It's a social barrier that's stopping them from achieving at work or maintaining a decent level of attendance. So that's something that I would really love to engage more employers with in terms of what we do in Doncaster, because the data that we've seen over the past since COVID really has suggested that there's a significant number of people that are now suffering what we would call in-work poverty, so that they're working and they're still not managing to meet their essential bills, or they still struggle to manage finances and things like that, and they end up in debt. So I suppose that would be a shout out to employers to contact us to set up some sort of partnerships so we can help you support your staff. Not only will it be good for your employment, but it's great for Doncaster, because in terms of how we measure our metrics of performance, we brought in £9 million worth of income to Doncaster last year, and this is through benefits claimed, it's through sort of helping people with the finances. But not only does that make the individuals that we support more financially resilient, it makes the city more financially resilient, because most people spend the money in Doncaster. So that's £9 million that we've as an organisation brought into Doncaster to make it more financially secure. So I do think that's an important point. And like I say, I would love to speak to more businesses and more employers to look at not sorting people's problems out when they get to crisis, to be more preventative and be more proactive approach to, if we could sort the problem out when you first get your debt letter, it's much easier and less stressful than sorting it out when you've got the bailiff knocking at your door, or when your house is up for eviction.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I would absolutely echo that, having employers put things in place where it's more about reaching in than actually opposed to expecting people who are struggling or are in a crisis to reach out. A lot of employers will have things like employee assistance programs, and it's a confidential hotline that you can ring up, but it's so daunting, and it's not the same as having somebody that can perhaps come in and have, private, confidential, face-to-face appointments, and, it's someone from the community, an organisation that they trust, they recognise, and can help them with those kind of things. So I think we definitely need more of that collaboration between business and private sector, and organisations like yours that can really help bridge the gap with some of these things. And you touched on absenteeism, which, yes, I agree, we've seen huge rises in absence levels across the board, and I think a lot of it is associated with those social barriers. But then we've got presenteeism as well, where we've got people who are turning up for work and there's perhaps bums in seats, but mentally they're distracted, they're elsewhere because they have got these things like mounting debts to think about.
Yeah, and that's definitely the case. The 2 points that I like to pick up on are the fact that people don't ask for help. Like, particularly if you're in debt, a lot of people leave it to crisis point. They leave it till the bailiff's at the door, or the car's getting repossessed, or things like that. So, if I could say anything that people take from this podcast, I guess it would be that don't leave it too late. It's okay to ask for help, and the amount of people that have seen a change in the financial stability, I suppose, since COVID, because of the cost of living, it's affecting everybody. So don't think that you're the only person in Doncaster that's suffering from debt, because you're really not, and it's really probably not as bad as you think. So that's important. In terms of financial and health well-being, there's a lot of research in relation to the social determinants of health, and they basically mean that people are having ill health or attending the doctors a lot because of social issues like debt, housing stability, that sort of thing. So what we do as an organisation in order to the root cause, I suppose, is to try and prove our worth to funders. But we do a wellbeing survey at the start, so your first point of contact, we'll ask you a couple of wellbeing questions, and then when we've resolved your query, we'll ask you a couple of questions. And the idea is to sort of track your health to see if there is an impact. And 37% of people that we dealt with over the last 6 months have said that they felt more able to deal with the problems. And 49% said they were more in control of the finances. And that doesn't necessarily mean that they've claimed something they were not entitled to, but it could be. But it also potentially just means that somebody sat with them and gone through the financial statement and said, these are your incomes, these are your outgoings, let's work together as to how to make this work so that you're not relying on credit or relying on debt and things like that. So that sort of thing is really important to staff wellbeing. And we've had staff in our own organisation that have struggled because of the cost of living crisis. So we know that it happens. And it's just about being as supportive as you can be for the staff and knowing who to turn to or who to ask when these difficult times hit us, because they do it as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that is an absolutely amazing statistic, to be honest, that 37% of people said that they felt better and more able to deal with those things. And it's no surprise. I mean, in my line of work, so I'm a trauma-informed HR practitioner, and that means to recognise things like, there's no wonder people are feeling anxious, depressed. Have they got some kind of disorder, or actually is that more about their social circumstances? If you're experiencing poverty, you've got bailiffs at the door, you don't know how you're going to feed your kids next week, there is no wonder that you're going to feel depressed and stressed and anxious.
Yeah, totally. It's like, how do you have capacity to make work a priority if your priority is keeping the lights on, heating your home or feeding your kids? It's just, if we can be more supportive as a society, let alone as employers, I think that it'd just be so much better.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. So one question, and I don't know if you'll kind of have any stats around this that spring to mind, but how prevalent is debt?
It's probably fairly significant. Like it's we live in a society where it's easy to get credit and it's easy to take phones out and cars out on finance and things like that. And it only takes one too many of those before you're struggling or before you're in crisis. And I don't know the stat, but I know there is a stat in terms of most people don't have 3 months worth of savings. So if you don't have that luxury of that safety net and you lose your job, or there's a trigger point in your life, like you lose your job, you have a relationship breakdown, you're out of work through illness or something like that, how do you cope? Like it's a really difficult challenge.
A message I'd really just love to get across, and for people to understand, just how many people within their organisations will have a level of debt that is crippling and will be living in poverty. And I think it is easy to sit with a very different life experience, a very different window to the world. I've experienced that firsthand. In the past, I had a lot of coerced debt. So I was in a relationship where there was domestic abuse. I had a lot of coerced debt. I actually ended up with a few CCJs. And one day, a managing director turned around and said to me, why have you not bought a house? Well, because I've had all this debt and trying to pay my debt off. And very bizarre question, actually, in hindsight, to ask somebody nowadays, the amount that rent is and the amount you've got to save to put a deposit down on a house anyway. But I said, I've had this bad debt and I have to wait for these markers to drop off my credit file and I've had to pay it all back. And he said to me, what the hell were you thinking, getting yourself in debt? And honestly, I sat there just a bit flabbergasted. I was thinking how to keep a roof over my head, where my next meal's coming from, how I'm going to keep travelling to work and back. I wasn't thinking like, oh, this is a jolly old good time. I'll just take out another payday loan.
I mean, and thank you for sharing that. That's really important. And like I say, I do think though the cost of living crisis has impacted everybody. It's impacted the people at the top. So I'd like to think that nowadays people are more understanding, and there's a greater awareness of how easy it is to fall into debt, for example, but also how difficult it is to get out once you're in. Because like you say, stuff can stay on credit reports for 6 years. CCJs are difficult to get out of, and once you're in that circle of becoming reliant on debt and being in debt, it is really difficult to get out of it. Like, it's not easy, but this is why it's important for us to ensure that employers are aware of the circumstances that the staff may find themselves in, and how easy it is to like most of the time, like say yours is from a domestic violence point of view, that's no fault of your own that you found yourself in that situation. And there's certain trigger points that are different for different people that mean you fall into debt. So I'd like to think nowadays, because everybody's felt the pinch of the cost of living crisis, that people will be more aware. But if not, then things like this to make people are important, because it makes the people at the top of their organisation think about the person at the bottom, because it is important.
Yeah, absolutely. How important do you think it is to have education around finances at a very, very basic level? I guess one example that springs to mind for me was I had an employee once that came to me absolutely furious with these letters that their council tax had been sent to bailiffs, referred to bailiffs for collection because they'd not paid it. And they came with these letters and all of their pay slips, quite angry, and said to me, I've already paid tax from my wages. You must not be sending my tax money through. Why am I getting letters about this council tax? And having to kind of sit down and explain that they're two different taxes.
Yeah. And I do think that is an issue. And financial literacy, I don't think, I mean, it's a while since I was at school, but I don't think it's taught in schools like it should be. And I don't think things like budgeting and things like that. And I do think living in a consumerist society that we live in doesn't help. But I would like to see more done in the field of financial awareness. Because a lot of the times you go through budget sheets with clients and they've got, I don't know, like a Land Rover, £500, £600 a month for a car. It's like, do you need this? Like, is this a priority when you can't pay your bills and you're not paying your council tax? And it's just about like making them aware of there's interest on this as well. It's not just the fact that you're renting the car or buying the car, and things like council tax. People sometimes, young people in particular, they leave home. They don't necessarily get taught by their parents like, this is your water bill, this is your council tax bill, this is your insurance, like all that sort of stuff. So I would love to see that. We have launched a project recently as a sort of a pilot in this field with the Coalfields Regeneration Trust. So we're actually running some financial awareness sessions at job centres and at the YMCA to try and support young people with making better financial decisions, because unless you explain to it the ins and outs of financial stuff, it's difficult and it's confusing. Things like mortgages. We recently bought a house, and I'm sure I'm not convinced I knew the ins and outs of everything. So it is difficult. But yeah, the only way we can do that is by supporting people and giving them the opportunity to make informed choices in their lives, which I feel like is really important. If people know what they're signing up to, they maybe think, is it right for me to sign up to it in the first place? Because they better understand the implications of it. And I often feel like that's not the case. So I'm a big champion for allowing people to make informed decisions in their lives, but we have to take steps to enable them to do that.
If you could share one piece of advice with a business owner about how to support their team or community better, what would it be?
I think it's to be an open and supportive employer. If you notice, I've got staff, I notice when something's wrong, I can tell. Try to interact with them, try to engage with them. Is there something you need my support with? Sometimes it's just that conversation, just so they know that you're supportive of them. Because to be fair, a happy employee is a better employee, isn't it?
Yeah.
So yeah, just to be open and to know where to turn if somebody says, do you know what, I'm struggling, I've got this issue, I've my housing's not secure, I've got some debts, I'm struggling with childcare costs. So these are all things that we could provide advice on, and we would happily work with employers to ensure that they know if this does come up in a one-to-one or just in a chat at the coffee machine, that, Citizens Advice help with that. Can I get you the number? So things like that. That would be brilliant. It would really help us with the levels of in-work poverty that we do see in Doncaster.
Yeah. And what support do you need right now as an organisation from the local business community?
So we try to work quite closely with the Doncaster business community, and we're a member of the Doncaster Chamber. And I just want to give a shout out to Centurion, who've really supported us over the past 12 months with some energy efficiency packs for our energy projects. So they provide us with these packs that reduce people's energy consumption by 40%. They've got draft excluders and window seals and all sorts of things like that in them. Through our partnership with Centurion, we can give those out for free. And we've got quite a lot of packs to give out. So that's just a great example of how working with the business community, it can benefit the people we work with. But things like being a trustee, I'm always interested in having trustees, because in the charity sector, what you tend to find is that the chief exec does every single job possible. So I'm HR, I'm finance, I'm ops, I'm the chief exec, the strategic lead, I suppose. So sometimes having that trustee board to rely on with their skills and their expertise in different areas, that's so useful. And even if it's just that hour for me to sound off something off against you, how would you do this? What do you think to this proposal? Sometimes just having that is so valuable to the BCSE sector, you wouldn't believe. There's things like staff volunteer days, sponsorship. You could fund a project that would go a long way in terms of supporting your staff.
I think a good thing to address would be that, you know, you are a charity and it's not something that is completely government funded.
No, I wish. No, we're not. And I think that's another misconception with the Citizens Advice itself. We get a lot of when we get complaints, because we get complaints about demand, because we've seen 10,000 people last year, but if I added the money I could see 20,000. So we did, and we see in the region of 800 calls a week. There's no way I can deal with that level of capacity. So when I do get a complaint, it's generally about that. And one of the things that we get thrown is, well, you're funded by the government, aren't you? It's like, no, we're not. How it works with the Citizens Advice, it's a federated model. So we're all our own individual charities in our own right. So there's 260 of us across the country, but the Doncaster one is a charity in its own right. So the funding we bring in, the work that we do is all off the back of mine and my team's hard work and the trustees' hard work. So it is a real challenge, particularly in this current climate, to get funding and provide a service that does everything that you think it needs to do. So that is probably one of the biggest misconceptions. Don't get me wrong, we are funded by the local authority, and they are very supportive. But in terms of the projects we run, it's the hard work and determination and ensuring that the vision of Doncaster and the voice of Doncaster is heard by funders, so they come back to us and say, I will fund this project, this is important, you will make a difference in people's lives. So it's incredibly difficult being a VCSE organisation at the moment.
What does it mean to you to lead a business here in Doncaster?
I'm really proud of Doncaster, and I'm proud to be from Doncaster. And I feel like I've always wanted a role where I can to be part of something that helps people and helps Doncaster. So I find it as difficult as it is at times, and it is tough. I feel proud and privileged to be the head of the organisation and to work with. I've got a fantastic team. They go above and beyond for the clients every single day, and it's a difficult job. So if I'm proudest of anything, it's the team that we've assembled and then the impact that has on communities, because we've talked about the income gains and stuff like that, but it's more about that person feels supported, and that person, we have that interaction that can make a life-changing difference to somebody's life.
Yeah.
So that's the thing that I look back and think, this is why I'm most proud, the team and the impact that the team has.